Let me ask you guys a question. When do the ducks and the birds normally migrate? Do you guys know? Bird migrations start early. But this year, they're off. Everything is off. Everything is off. And it's off because our planet is going through a fast tilt. Now, they just picked up on this today, which means by we're going to see some degree changes in our position. That was just picked up on today. It was an amazing find, but it's not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. That means something is of such magnitude that is causing a bit of problems. They've had to adjust or do course corrections on quite a few satellites. That implies the Earth is really moving erratically. Now, it's not enough to notice it right now. No more than you notice the Earth traveling at such high speed, traveling in the universe right now. But it does pose a big problem. And because that was picked up on and verified today, it's going to pose us some very difficult issues. We're now about to see the event changes regarding weather, space phenomena, but most importantly, your brains are going to be highly affected, right? The timing is impeccable, of course, because they're about to switch the rest of the frequencies over to 4 and 5G, right? About to do away with 3G. All of a sudden, they find out that the planet is indeed tilting. Big time shift to a pretty significant shift, and it will continue. I'll say it again, they just picked up on that today. So it is, it's something that's been observed, but when the numbers came back and the verification came through, it was quite shocking because they thought it impossible. It's too soon for something like that to happen, right? So they say. But evidently, no, that's not the case. But it's going to mess with your head, right? Which means all of you guys that are prone to external aggravations, you're going to receive more aggravations, right? It's why it's so important to be emotionally in control of yourselves by opening yourself up for placement of the Messiah. You do that by abiding in him, right? You do. You do that by abiding in him. Now, bird migrations are off because they operate by magnetite in their heads, right? And so they're very sensitive to seasonal changes by way of that magnetite. But it's, all things have been delayed. There are certain trees that are just now starting to shed their leaves. Strangest thing. So things are really, when nature goes off course, that's when you have a problem, right? We can always notice things or see things and feel things, but when nature as a whole begins to go off course, we have a problem. Spiders, likewise, are doing something very unusual, and they really are, they signify massive changes in weather phenomena all the time, almost perfectly. As far as I can, look back into the data, they've not made a mistake yet as far as seasonal changes. And they are a real good indicator of what is coming because they will stay dormant. They don't go in burrows or anything. They just kind of stop moving. They curl up, stop moving. Most of them, they flatten themselves anywhere they can. And they will stay put in the corner of your walls, near baseboards, but they will not move. They won't move. Strangest thing. Their temperature in the bodies can go down. They don't have antifreeze, but they can survive very cold temperatures. And, a lot of people probably think they, hibernate, but they don't. They just simply slow down and they curl up and go to sleep. But they also do something else. When extreme weather is bound to approach, their behavior changes. And they've noted that behavioral change in spiders for some time now, but not like it is as of late. With all these indications, this is it. I can say that with a lot of certainty, that this is it, meaning as these seasons approach, you're going to see a type of, phenomena you've not observed before. It's going to be quite extreme, right? We all know that because we've been through half of it. It'll be extreme, but most importantly, it's going to wreak havoc upon your own minds. See, you may not know this, but you have magnetite in your brain also. How many of you know that? You have magnetite in your head. You know what? I'll give you the answer to a mystery. If you sleep with your head pointed toward the south, the nature of your dreams are going to be different because your brain operates differently. If you sleep with your head pointed towards the north, the nature of your dreams changes. And do you know that some people cannot sleep with their head pointed toward the south? They can't do it. They just can't do it. So your head pointing, right, the head of your bed when you're lying down, if you point it towards that cardinal direction, right, in the north, you're going to find yourself having a somewhat of a peaceful sleep. But if you sleep with your head toward the south, it'll be disrupted. The nature of your rest is going to be very different. And the reason for that is you're going to be affected by the magnetite that's in your head as well as other elements that's in your head, and it makes a huge difference, a big difference. If you ever want a wild dream, point your head toward the west. And normally you have lucid dreams. Your brain is not quite shut down all the way, right? And your alpha and delta sets won't lock in all the way. So you can't get that. You'll have what do they call that? They call that the magic sleep. Magic sleep is when you go to sleep, right? And all of a sudden you go to sleep. Then your alarm clock goes off right after you shut your eyes. You're like, what's going on here? You look at the clock, and indeed, it's early morning, but it feels like you didn't go to sleep at all, right? They call that magic sleep, and that normally happens when a person their head is pointed in a specific direction, or you're in a specific season. So once you allow your body, though, your head pointed toward the north again, your sleep changes big time. If it's pointed toward the south, you have a different influence at work, right? And it is, something. It is something to behold. All that because you have magnetite and other sensitive elements in the body. Now that means the environment can change how you think and operate. The environment can make you prone to aggravations or cause you to be immune to aggravations. It can enhance things in the body, and it can certainly degrade abilities in the body to a great degree, right? How do you overcome this? If your spiritual walk is everything, those of you you've really dived into your spiritual walk, right? You're going to be immune to it. Now, here's what that means. You're still going to have irritations, aggravations of the flesh, but they'll no longer get to you, right? People, of course, will always attack, but they won't get to you. Sometimes things will happen in your life, but that the average person couldn't take, but it won't get to you. And that's a consequence of both having a spiritual life and not having one. If you don't have a spiritual life, right? Anybody who does not have a spiritual life for the times ahead, and I encourage them to get one, that they're not going to fare very well. Remember, our Father promised us tribulation in this world, didn't he? He did. He promised us that. He said we're going to have it. In fact, he made a decree. He did. He decreed that upon us. So our lives are tribulation. A lot of people don't quite get that fact. I know they. But what was that? That was in Peter, correct? Was that in Peter? In fact, that was, let me get this out here. That was one of those telltale scriptures that if you look at it, you begin to understand, right? About your own tribulation. Anybody know what tribulation means? Trouble. It means trouble, right? And God said, you shall have tribulation. You shall have tribulation, right? You will have tribulation. And if you shall have tribulation, then it's promised to you. But here's the good news. You know, there's good news behind that. You guys know that, right? There's good news behind that. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. That's John 16:33, right? You shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. What does that mean? You know what, that's kind of strange, right? He says, he said what he said to us that we might have peace. He says, in the world, you're going to have trouble, right? You're going to have trouble, but be of good cheer. Now, who can say that? If you're going to say, oh, okay, children, when you go out into the world, you're going to get beat up, beat down. You're going to be strangled to death, almost to the point of non-existence, but be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. What is he saying? What does this represent? He's not talking about one moment. Listen to me, for those of you who are mature. He's talking about your very life. Here's the good news. If you have had tribulation in your life, and all of us have that to a different degree, you'll not have tribulation when the time comes for the world to have tribulation. Why? Because the same one who said that is also the same one who wanted you to pray that you're worthy to not be included in the great test of this world. Everybody must have tribulation. Everybody must. But many of you had it early in life, and you belong to Christ. You accepted him. So then your troubles mean something, right? Those who have had no tribulation, they have to be tested. They have to be. They won't step foot in the kingdom until they're tested, period. Now, I want you to think about something, because a lot of times we say, Lord, take this trouble away and take this trouble away, this problem away. We do. We say those things. Yet we still have these troubles and problems. Why? Because he declared it. Not one of us can deny that no matter how much we pray, trouble has been in our lives. And it was amplified when we believed more and more. What is the purpose of this? When God makes a decree, it cannot be sidestepped. When God makes a way for you to get from point A to point B, you can't go through another door. You have to do it by his process, or you will not enter. So your life has been tribulation. But the blessing in that is, instead of going through it all at one time, he stretched your troubles out over a lifetime. If you collapse all of what you went through in one moment of time, that's great tribulation. There have been plenty of times in my life I wanted to go. I did. I want to be here. Other times in my life where I thought I messed up so bad that I was no good for anybody. And in that case, I wanted to go. Other cases in time, during times of isolation, you feel abandoned. Other times, you feel that, people like you for these external reasons and they cannot see you, right? So we go through all these things. People have treated us unfairly. We were able to see that, right? Your health falls apart. You don't understand why. Listen, I'm telling you why. Because everybody has to have tribulation. Everybody. A lot of Christians are terrified of that great tribulation that God decreed. You need not be terrified of that. That's coming upon the world who has the world. They enjoy themselves in the world. They don't have the conviction you have. Conviction stops you from going but so far in what you do. You can only go so far. Ego will have you brag on what you have gone through. And then that not being qualified sends you right into a host of problems. But the Lord straightens that out over our lives. You've been through it already. Your moment is coming, a moment when that you won't believe. I won't believe it for you. Listen, I'm a person, I would say I'm a person of very, very, very strong faith. right? I actually believe in Christ. I don't sidestep anything, nor do I deny all the wrong I've done. But I freely accept it, right? But there's a time coming. That'll be so it'll be incredible that I will not be able to hold my composure. I won't be. It's called deliverance, a time of deliverance. In the Bible, it tells you about that time of deliverance, but the language is such that is almost difficult to catch up to. So I just want to tell you guys this. In the book of Enoch, you know what the Lord said? You know what the Lord said? He's coming, and everybody's going to have fear, but he's going to make peace with the elect, and he will protect the elect. And they'll find peace in him. Jesus will come first with 10,000 of us holy ones. And you guys know I had a recent dream about the last portions of things we have to go through, right? I had a dream. It's very disturbing, so I never told it, right? And in fact, I still ponder things in that now. You ever have a dream where you feel it down in your bones? You know it's true, and you can't shake it. So you just ponder that dream. It's one of those dreams. I won't tell you the gist of the dream, but at the end of it, this guy, this group, I'll tell you the end of this dream. It was horrible. Something horrible happened to everybody. It was horrible. And I was in the middle of it. But we were thinking about escaping. And somebody gave me a cake. Listen to me. This last part of the dream. Somebody gave me this guy. He made a cake. He was in charge of everything, right? He made a cake. And he put this gravy substance on it. He rolled it up and he said, eat it. Take it. You're going to eat this. And I was scared to take the cake. It was a big cake, too. I was frightened to take it. Well, he sent me into the church with the bread. Listen to me. He sent me into the church. And when I went into the church, people looked at the bread and they looked at me and just turned their heads like he's going to die. And I was frightened. I was horrified. It was like I was a kid in this dream. And I knew I was about to be hunted. I was about to share the painful and gruesome death that I had witnessed in this dream of others. And right at the time when I walked around the corner of the church and I saw this one guy, he was like, we're getting out of here. I said, what? And I didn't know what to do. I was lost in the sauce. I didn't know what was going on. And so I followed this guy and another guy came, right? So listen to me. We start going through these things. There was one case, we were trying to escape and they were hunting us. We tried to escape, but this guy says, hey, come walk across this beam. And it was on the edge of a house. It was like 8 stories up. This little ledge had to be no more than 3 inches. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, if I'm going to fall. This guy just walked across it like it was nothing. I said, okay, if he can do it, I can do it, but I'm scared to death. I can't do that. I'm going to die. And he was just nonchalant. He said, come on. He was happy the whole time. Somehow, I stepped on it, followed him, made it through. Then we got through some more obstacles. All of a sudden, we got through a bunch of these things. We went to this forum, and I saw a lot of people there. The first people that were in the dream, right? Because everybody was lined up. The cities were empty. They looked like, but everything, it was so quiet. And the only one that was speaking was this guy. And one of the fellows who said, we're getting out of here, one of the guys that were supposed to be killed at the beginning, but they took off running, right? We saw them driving some sort of a Polaris vehicle with the top off. And I looked at him and I said, hey, he made it. And then I got happy that he made it. Well, when I turned around, I began to see other people who also made it. They escaped. They made it. At that point, I lost it, right? I was highly emotional. I was. And then, okay, that portion passed. I still didn't know what was going on. Then we went into this house and I saw this Asian guy, this Asian kid, it looked like. And in fact, when I looked around, well, I can't tell you that part, but I saw this Asian kid. And this Asian kid was in this house. And instantly, this knowledge hit me, right? There was no more, that the world was so different. There was no more negativity. Nothing was really owned at that time because no one had a heart to own anything. And every good thing that had been built was somehow partly preserved in a very good state. And now people could have real peace. But the first thought that hit my mind was, now we can live free. Everybody can live free without any negativity, right? Nobody shut their doors. It was so funny because you could just walk into somebody's house and sit down and start a conversation. There were no introductions. It was that free. It was that free. And nobody would ever say, get out, or we don't know you. There were no groups, no cliques, no anything. Everything was everybody's. And everybody wanted everybody to have everything. It was beyond words. But that was here on the earth. That wasn't even the final portions of it, because everybody was getting ready for the unbelievable in a time that was unbelievable. Then all of a sudden I turned back and I looked. The folks, the first set of people who had escaped, they weren't even human. They were messengers. They were angels. The person I was following that was giddy and happy the whole time, he was an angel. An angel. What happened was the angels were among men, but men did not know it. And slowly but surely they were helping the faithful ones out of bondage. And nobody ever knew it. Nobody could. It was impossible to discern it. Because God sealed their identities and no one could tell. You couldn't discern it. You could not tell. You would only find out at the end when they turned back into a different type form, which was almost like a teenager. Just like everybody looked like teenagers. It was very different then. Even our structure was the feeling. If I could have that feeling right now, I wouldn't want anything else. Just the feeling of it. But it was indescribable. The point of this, that being the ending, the point of this was in the beginning, something awful happened. And it just kept going. And it was awful. Part of that signifies a little tiny piece of life. The final process is the process of deliverance. It's how everybody is delivered. In fact, it's almost like an insight beyond insights. Everybody being delivered the same way. And it was never about what you really think it's about. It really is a personal type thing here. It's not a group thing, it's a personal thing. We come together as a group to increase our spirit in truth, in wisdom, right? In knowledge. Worship. I saw what true worship was. See, remember this guy made me some bread and he sent me into a church. That church was full of worship, but God, it's almost like in this dream, God showed me what they called worship was not worship at all. They were doing that to save their own skins. Everybody had a reason to do what they did to save their own skins, and they were in deep bondage, and they could never escape. When I went in there with that bread, it was a different bread. Nobody would eat of that bread. And anybody who had that bread was to be killed. And this guy gave me that bread. It's like a death sentence. So I walked into the church, and everybody looked at me and just put their heads down. They didn't want to look at me. They knew I was going to die. I could perceive what they were thinking. It was a death sentence. It was like in perpetual sorrow in that place. I'd never seen anything like that. It was behind the curtain, because I came from behind the curtain to see the people in the church. He sent me in there with that bread. They looked at me and put their heads down, offered no help, no instruction, no anything. And then this giddy guy out of the corner says, "Come on, we're getting out of here. Come on." That's what he said. Come on, we're getting out of here. So listen to me. The bread that was given to me, and whatever gravy was on top at first, I thought it was a signal to everybody else that I was about to die a horrible death like everybody else, but it wasn't. The bread that he gave me, those who were sitting in that church did not want. They did not want that bread. They didn't want that bread. They wanted nothing to do with that bread. They didn't even want to be seen looking at the bread. They wanted nothing to do with that bread. And the guy that was all giddy, I thought was a guy, but was in fact an angel, looked at me with the bread and said, "Come on." In fact, I noticed at the end of that dream, that big piece of cake, bread this guy made me, everybody who made it had one of those. Everybody did. And those who didn't make it, they did not have it. And it was prepared a very specific way, not just any way. It was very specific. And in the culture I was in, they were so, listen, their primary concern was to do everything they could to save their own lives. And I was yanked out of that mindset of saving your own life. Every thought they had, everything they did was driven by fear. And so fear had bound them up and locked them up in a prison. To save their own lives, they stayed in bondage. In their minds, they would hope they were free, but they wouldn't dare do anything against what was holding them. Because above all things, they were going to save their own lives. And in doing that, they were all in bondage. That was a shake-up. That wasn't even all of it, but that was a shake-up dream. That's what that was. And listen, when I followed this guy, I'm telling you right now, I didn't know what in the world was going on. But every step of the way, I was led out of that bondage. Because if it's one thing I didn't do, was I was not trying to save my own life. I was actively seeking to help somebody else out. It was just very difficult to find anybody to help out. I didn't care about my own life. And I still had fear, but not to the point that I would compromise who I was for the sake of that fear. This guy that came on the scene was asking people their names. And he was asking everybody twice. And they would say their name for real, and then they would change it. And then he would pat them on the shoulder when they changed their names. This was the first guy that came in that was killing everybody in a horrible way. They changed their names so they could stay alive. They would do whatever was necessary to stay alive. And everything the church I walked into, it was like walking into death. I can't explain it to you. Had a very different type darkness over it. A cathedral I went in had a very different type darkness. They were doing things to stay alive. They didn't even know that by doing that, they were killing themselves. But I was handed that bread. I want to make this point. I didn't ask for the bread. Nobody did. They were handed the bread. Not one person knew anything about the bread. They didn't know what it was for, but they were handed the bread. I was handed the bread, and I took it. I was handed that bread. I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know it was available. I did not know what it was for, but I was handed that bread, which means I didn't have the knowledge to ask for it. Not in that environment. It was weird looking anyway. But all those at the end who were free. I mean, I felt, you know what? At the end of this dream, it's one of those dreams where if you could stay there, you wouldn't come back here, right? It was one of those type dreams. And it wasn't heaven. It was not paradise. It was just all of this evil that's in the world was just not there. And the way people were was a fulfillment of a dream itself. Can you imagine a world where no one has an ulterior motive, where no one has a hidden agenda, where everyone can talk to everyone, right? Where they can be themselves in full, where there is no law of iniquity, but who you are is who you are, where everything is bound in freedom, where there are no limitations and you just you're on this discovery, where true love is exercised and truly received of all that you encounter, where no one is trying to go off into this group and this person's not going off into that group, but then everybody can sit down at any given time, start a conversation, begin to talk, and it's enjoyable, it's peaceful, it is beautiful. And if you get up and go somewhere else, everything is open to you, nothing is shut to you. Can you imagine a place? Could you imagine if the earth was like that? And there was no brokenness, none. But in bondage, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. There was someone always tortured. People operated by fear and fear alone. You couldn't get away from fear. Everything they did was to save their own skins. Everything. Because I kept hearing people say, no, if I do that, I'm going to die. If I do this, I'm going to die. If I do that, I'm going to die. That's all you heard. There was no more of that. And to summarize that, if I narrow that down to this world, that's exactly what people are doing. Driven by a spirit God did not give us. There are many doing things to save their own skins, and they don't know that's their bondage. They can't break free because they're terrified of dying. They're terrified of wounds. They're terrified of it, and it imprisons them, and only God can break it. How do I know that? Because I was frightened too. But God gave me, listen, that bread was given to me. I didn't ask for it. It was given to me. I saw another person reject it. They were too frightened to take it. They thought it was a death sentence, and it was. It means that you would die to death itself. That means you'll be in life if you took the bread. Death was killing all it had over and over again. There was no escape for half those folks. Why? Because they did everything they did to save themselves, which means they were driven by fear. Because if you seek to save your own life, it's because you're so overwhelmed with fear that's going to just dominate your life. Understanding the word of the Lord is a gift. Even if you understand the small parts, it's a gift. But there was also a warning in that dream. You see, because through Christ, we overcome death. Folks, hear me on this. Through Christ, we overcome death. Those who don't overcome death never had Christ, because Christ defeated death. And if he be within us, so it shall be defeated within us, but only by his power, not by someone's intellect, not by their craftiness, not by their own wisdom, but by Christ. Death is defeated. Do you guys see that? It was given. But the world, oh my, it was already a prison. They couldn't see it. They were living like this all the time. Now, having said that, I want you guys to take a close look at your fears. Don't turn away from your fears, but actually look at your fears. See the root of the fear. See what it's causing. Because I trust the dreams the Lord gives me. When he gives me a dream, it's not pleasing. It's not something I ever want to have twice. Just put it that way, right? Nor is it something I brag on, like I know, because I don't know. But I know that fear, having felt that fear in that dream, it's a prison you can't escape. It's around every corner. People were surely imprisoned by it. And they did what they did to save their own lives. Now, the Bible says, out of the mouth flows the issues of the heart. If you listen carefully to everybody, you're going to start hearing something. You're going to start hearing about them trying to save their own lives, doing anything they can to save their own lives. And that's no good. We had to raise up a new standard, a brand new one. Because to dodge death, right? It's just not going to happen. If you think you're going to dodge death, you're already bound up by it. Those people were bound up in darkness by death, and they didn't even know it. It was fear that kept them in shackles. And they denied they were in shackles. Isn't that horrible? Can you imagine seeing a person handcuffed, right? But they deny they're handcuffed. See a person in shackles, they deny they're in shackles. The bread, Christ, he represents the bread. It was given to me. I didn't go seek it out because I knew nothing about it. It was given to me. And something in me said yes to it because I couldn't understand what it was for. I just knew that it was a death sentence to have it. But what I didn't know was when I took that bread, I would die to death itself and be brought totally into life. This process happening right now, based on your sincerity, you'll get closer to the Messiah. But there's so many things twisted. You got to be very, very careful. Other things are beginning to speak and act and demonstrate. But you got to be careful. The reward is greater than any trouble we've ever been through. But what's even greater than the reward of eternal life or life, period, is knowing that from the beginning, you were never left alone in the first place. Without you fully understanding the act of deliverance, the Lord will deliver you anyway when your heart is genuine to him. And consequently, all those who do what they do to save their own skins, they're going to find out. After all the gates to the kingdom of death are shut, they're going to find out. And they will never depart from those places. And that is a horrific and horrible thought.